Welcome to America 451 with your host, Bill Monty.
I'm recording this in the evening of Wednesday, November 6th, exactly one day after the election. There's been a lot said today. I have a lot of thoughts about it. I will say one thing. If you've been paying attention to this podcast since I started, I feel the urge to say, I told you so. But people weren't listening. People like to believe the myths that they have. For the last few years, followers of the MAGA party, I don't call them Republicans, followers of the MAGA party have indeed been telling me and telling all of us that people like us are the problem. I didn't believe them. You didn't believe them. We believed all the polls and all the media and everything else. But apparently they have their finger on the pulse of America better than some of us do. The thing is that people like me don't want to believe that half of the people in this country of voting age support the things that a man like Donald Trump is behind. We thought that the first term, all of those lies, all of that corruption, all of that disrespect, all of that mania would be enough for everybody. It wasn't. Because we've had bad presidents before. In my lifetime, there was Richard Nixon. But the difference is that back then, we had the other arms of the government that helped offset when a president got out of line. Nixon couldn't do what he wanted to because the Supreme Court and Congress were there to stop him. Seems like yesterday. It was a long time ago. So Donald Trump won. As of 4 o'clock today, Kamala Harris conceded that she lost. She's hoping that we'll all still join together. More dreaming. Despite what happened today, the world is going to keep turning on its axis. We see today the world didn't stop. It's a little after 6:30 on Wednesday, November 6th. Everything is the same, except the future. But people like me, who believe like me, we feel stupid today. And not just because our candidate lost the election, but because we put our faith in the belief that the American people would rise up to the same principles that founded this nation. I know. People who support Donald Trump will say exactly the same thing. We both will say that we're right. We don't seem to be reading the same Constitution. We don't seem to be reading the same Bill of Rights. And that's always been okay in the past. It's been all right to disagree, but not to this extreme. We're so far apart. There is no middle ground. The veil of civil discourse and basic compassion and caring, it has been ripped aside. And again, I have to wake up to the fact that at least 50% of my countrymen and countrywomen, they're not good people. They're not smart people. Because smart people don't vote for someone and put them in power that's going to take away some of the things you need. That you don't put someone in power who doesn't care about you. And yet you did. And I'm perplexed. So as an angry and disappointed and confused American, I sit here now and I'm going to do what Americans do best. I'm going to start blaming people. I'm going to start naming people. Whose fault is it that this turned out as poorly as it did? Because all along we've been hearing how close it was going to be. It wasn't even close. There was no doubt. This wasn't 2020 where some votes were decided by 44,000 or a couple of thousand, 7,000. It was never close. Don't get me started on the Electoral College. So who's to blame for all this? Well, I'm going to start with loony George Clooney, who famously began this whole thing by publishing an op-ed piece in the New York Times asking for President Biden to step aside. Didn't think about he was doing this at a time when there would only be a few months to prepare someone else. Didn't think to pick up the phone and say, President Biden, I had a fundraiser for you about a month ago. And at that time, I was concerned. I was concerned about your reaction. You seem to slow down. Is everything all right? Can you reassure me? No, he waited until after that first debate with Donald Trump. He didn't make that call. He didn't reach out to Dr. Jill Biden, the president's wife, and say, hey, maybe something's wrong. Maybe we should have a conversation. Maybe someone bigger and better than me, because I'm just an actor, should be having this conversation. No, he decided the best thing to do would be to take out a full-page opinion piece in the New York Times and humiliate and embarrass the sitting president who was running for office. And I don't care how old you are. If you're a man of power, the most powerful man in the world, you can't be humiliated like that. You can't recover from something like that. Person number two, this is a hard one because I admire the man so much. Barack Obama. Dude, you didn't have the president's back. You should have. You should have stepped up and had a private conversation and said, I have concerns, Joe. I don't know if you're up to the job. Are you? Should America be concerned? When he needed your wisdom, when he needed your support, you abandoned him. And then you jumped on the bandwagon to do the most harm you possibly could. To the Bidens themselves, Dr. Joe Biden, President Biden. I don't know if the president's mental acuity is slowed down more than any other person his age. But if so, his advisors, his wife, his family, his close friends, someone should have said something. You let it all go too long. By the time he was forced out, and make no mistake about it, President Biden was forced out of this run for the office of president. There wasn't enough time to prepare the next candidate. The greatest politician in the world would have been hard-pressed to put together a winning run for the office. And Joe, when you took office, when you were running in 2020, you said then that you would be a one-term president. You would do what it takes to keep Donald Trump out of office again. You'd set the country right, and then you'd hand it off. You didn't do that. I get it. Power is hard to give up on, isn't it? You should have been thinking more about your country, though. Nancy Pelosi, shame on you. You did all you could to get the president to get out of the race because you had your own agenda. And that was, in whatever time you have left on this earth, you were going to see a woman elected president, and the vice president was a woman and would be the next person to step in to replace the president. You did this knowing that the cost and the reality of doing something like that in today's climate could be disastrous. Why is that, you ask? It is obvious that America, at least half of it, is not ready to elect a woman president. I don't agree with that. If it was up to me, the entire government would be filled with women. But when it looked like Hillary Clinton would be president in 2016, they put Donald Trump out there. And the people decided to vote for an old white guy, completely unqualified for the job and completely nuts. What did you think they were going to do when the same guy was running? And this time we're talking about a woman of color. America has run screaming from that idea. And that's sad because Kamala Harris is probably exactly what this country needed right now. And we're never going to know because I doubt she'll ever run for this high of an office again. Maybe run for senator, vice president. Finally, the Democratic Party. I'll say this right now. You are out of touch. You don't get it. Lofty, old-fashioned ideals and slogans don't ring true to the majority of Americans any longer. You didn't understand that while inflation and gas prices were lower, the average American couldn't afford to buy groceries in the store. Stock market was up. Inflation was down. And everyone was still struggling. You didn't get it. You wanted the numbers to do your work for you, but you weren't listening to what people were saying. The vice president, one of her main talking points was she was going to lower grocery prices. How? Was she going to go with a little price sticker and change them in the store in the aisles? What was the strategy for that? America today has a short attention span, and Donald Trump understands that. So he speaks in short phrases that speak to what the average American wants, even if what he's saying is total BS and a complete lie. They will listen because he doesn't take up a lot of their time explaining a bunch of stuff they don't understand. They already think no one respects them or understands them. He's up there dancing, YMCA, looking like your drunk Uncle Dave at a party. And while you're completely embarrassed at Uncle Dave, what you miss is everyone else at the party loves him. They don't understand that when you drive Uncle Dave on the way home, he throws up in your car because he's so drunk. They just like the show he puts on. Donald Trump is Uncle Dave. And you're the schmuck cleaning his puke out of your car. You live in a fantasy world. And as long as you do, and as long as it's occupied by people like Looney Clooney, and you don't talk to the people, if you don't understand what their fears, their dreams, and their hopes are, you're going to continue to lose. You didn't just lose the presidency, you lost Congress. The Supreme Court is riddled with conservatives right now. So how do you plan to survive the next 4 years? Please pass it on to us because many of us don't know how we're going to survive either. Talk to America. Find out what they want. Don't assume you know what they want. Find out what they want. Let their answers create your message. Then share that message with the politicians who are running on the Democratic ticket. Will you do that for us? I don't believe you will. I think if liberals are going to survive, or liberal ideals or liberal policies are going to survive, we need a whole new party, a liberal version of MAGA, where people are passionate, they don't back down, and they show up. Where I live, there's a street corner, very popular street corner. And every weekend, long before the election cycle started, they were on that street corner, people supporting Donald Trump. They're wearing his hats and his shirts and his shoes. They're waving American flags with Trump written on them. They're putting up signs. They are taking the abuse of the drivers driving by. Every Saturday, they're back. And all the time I've lived here, I never saw one group of people on a street corner holding up signs for Joe Biden or Vice President Harris or Barack Obama or anything. Why? Because the passion isn't there. One final note here, friends. If you want to know what's really moving the country right now, here, one day after the election, the Dow Jones Industrial Average, the stock market, was up over 1,500 points. Hasn't done that since 1896. That's all. Everyone hang tight. Be safe. I don't know if I'll be back for any more of these videos or messages or not. But if so, hit that subscribe button. Hit that like button. Let me know you're out there listening. Leave a comment. Even if you disagree with what I've said, please leave a comment. If we don't keep the dialogue going, we're dead. Until then, I quote Jimmy Buffett and say, bubbles up, because they'll point you towards home, no matter how far or how deep you roam. Be safe, my friends.